I never imagined I'd be back in my childhood bedroom at 28. Yet here I am, surrounded by old posters I once adored, the faint scent of lavender from a drawer I hadn't opened in years, and the quiet hum of a ceiling fan spinning above the same ceiling I used to stare at during sleepless teenage nights. Everything looks smaller now, like the room never grew up with me. A week ago, I was planning a wedding, or at least, I thought I was. His name was Daniel. We had spent countless nights dreaming up a shared future, a house with a garden, 2 kids, a golden retriever named Lucky, and maybe, if we were lucky ourselves, a honeymoon in Italy. We had even started touring open houses and discussing baby names. The life we pictured together was detailed, tangible. It felt so close, I could almost taste it. And then, in the span of a single conversation, everything unraveled. Now I'm sitting on the edge of my old twin-sized bed, the same bed where I used to write diary entries about my high school crushes, wondering how I got here. Not just physically, back under my parents' roof, but emotionally. How did I, a woman who thought she had finally figured it out, end up feeling so empty? I keep replaying it all in my head, like a movie I don't want to watch, but can't seem to stop. It's not just about losing Daniel. It's about what I gave, no, poured into that relationship. Everything I had, I gave. Every ounce of energy, every word of encouragement, every late-night pep talk, every little push he needed to believe in himself. And when he finally stood on his own 2 feet, it wasn't me he wanted standing beside him. Now that it's over, I find myself asking, what do I have left? Not a career leap, not a clearer path, not even a stronger sense of self, just exhaustion, and the overwhelming realization that I've lived most of my adult life filling up someone else's cup while mine sat bone dry. Looking back, our love didn't begin with fireworks. It wasn't some sweeping cinematic moment. It was quieter than that, gentle, like the sound of rain against a window pane. Daniel walked into my life during a time when I wasn't searching for anyone, and maybe that was the first sign. He was kind, a little lost, and carried the kind of softness that made me want to protect him. I mistook that feeling for love. Or maybe, in some way, it really was love, just not the kind that could last. He had dreams, but no direction. He told me he'd always wanted to work in law enforcement, but didn't believe he had what it took. He'd failed the written exam once before, and that failure haunted him more than he let on. I remember sitting across from him in coffee shops, laptop open between us, helping him research prep materials, walking him through every application, editing his resume line by line. We studied flashcards together. I quizzed him over dinner. I woke up early on weekends just to rehearse mock interviews with him. When he finally passed, when he got that call offering him a position at the local precinct, he cried in my arms. "I couldn't have done this without you," he said, and I believed it. I filled his world with encouragement, guidance, belief. I became his compass, his cheerleader, his steady ground. But somewhere along the way, I forgot to look down and see if I still had my own feet on the ground. It wasn't just the job. I helped him get his driver's license after years of avoiding it. I introduced him to podcasts about self-growth, pushed him to set monthly goals, helped him budget his finances. I was so proud of the man he was becoming that I never paused to ask, was he ever proud of me? Did he even know what my dreams were? Truthfully, I don't think he ever asked. The more I gave, the more I disappeared. Not because he took too much, but because I offered it freely. Like a bottomless well, always ready to pour, never asking to be filled in return. I told myself this was what love looked like. Lifting someone up, helping them grow, making sacrifices. Isn't that what every good partner does? But I've come to see that love, real love, isn't meant to be one-sided devotion disguised as partnership. It's not about one person growing while the other withers in their shadow. Still, I didn't notice it at the time. I kept going, thinking we were building something real together. I pictured the life ahead of us like a blueprint, each step planned with care. We'd get engaged in the fall, move into a townhouse by spring, maybe start trying for a baby by the following year. It was all laid out, at least in my head. But Daniel changed, or maybe he just grew into the man I helped him become. And in doing so, realized he wanted someone different. Someone who hadn't seen him at his worst. Someone who didn't remind him of who he used to be. That thought still stings. Because when he left, he didn't leave me behind. He left behind everything we built together. And yet I was the one standing in the ruins, wondering how I could be so full of love for someone who had already packed up and walked away. I don't hate him. I don't even blame him. He simply outgrew a version of his life that no longer served him. And I, without realizing it, had made myself part of that version. The irony? I thought I was helping him find himself. But in the process, I completely lost me. It wasn't just Daniel. That's the part that unsettled me the most. The slow, quiet realization that this wasn't the first time I had emptied myself in the name of love. It was simply the most recent, and maybe the most painful, because it finally forced me to look backward with eyes wide open. There was Ryan, 3 years before Daniel. He was funny, wild-hearted, a free spirit with no clear plan but endless charm. He dropped out of college in his final year, said school wasn't for him. I told myself I could help him find a different path, that maybe he just needed someone who believed in him. So I helped him enroll in a digital design course, even paid for part of it when he ran out of savings. He never finished it. When he left, all he said was, "I'm not ready for someone like you." And before Ryan, there was Leo, quiet, brooding, with eyes that always looked tired. He struggled with depression, especially after being laid off. I became his personal support system, cooking for him, encouraging therapy, even sitting beside him in waiting rooms when he didn't want to go alone. I told myself this was love, that being needed was the same as being cherished. He said he didn't want to drag me down, and then he disappeared. No calls, no closure. It was always the same script, just played by different actors. Each time, I became the nurturer, the fixer, the silent builder behind someone else's rise. And each time, I was left behind once they had the strength to move forward, as if I had served my purpose and the credits could roll without me. But I never stopped to ask why I kept falling into this pattern. Not until Daniel. Maybe because this time I had finally pictured forever. Maybe because at 28, I couldn't pretend anymore that this was just bad luck. It took being back in my childhood home, back in the house where the silence at dinner was louder than any argument, for me to see the truth. Growing up, I watched my parents live parallel lives under the same roof. There was no shouting, no physical violence, just distance, disconnection. My mother often floated through the house like a ghost, tired and distracted, while my father buried himself in work, rarely speaking unless necessary. I don't remember affection. I don't remember joy. What I do remember is watching my mother overextend herself, cooking, cleaning, checking in, while my father barely acknowledged her efforts. She gave, he received, and I watched and learned. I internalized that love meant service, that being good at loving meant being useful, that if I wanted to keep someone close, I had to earn their affection, not by being myself, but by being necessary. So I spent years trying to become irreplaceable, and in doing so, I made myself invisible. No one asked me to do it. No one forced me to give so much. But when your heart is shaped by absence, you learn to overcompensate with presence. I didn't want to become my mother, quietly fading into the background, unloved and unseen. But in trying to avoid her path, I walked right into its shadow. Daniel wasn't the cause of my heartbreak. He was the mirror, and for the first time, I had no choice but to look at my reflection. The day I moved back home was gray and drizzly, as if the weather itself had conspired to mirror my mood. My car was crammed with boxes, my books, my clothes, little fragments of a life I had once believed was permanent. The rain tapped against the windshield in soft, steady rhythms, like an old lullaby. I drove in silence, not even turning on the radio, my own thoughts loud enough to drown out anything else. When I pulled into my parents' driveway, the familiarity of the house made something inside me crumble. This wasn't supposed to happen. At 28, I had imagined bringing my children here to visit their grandparents, not dragging my life back in cardboard boxes. I had imagined arriving with a ring on my finger, not with tear tracks on my cheeks. Inside, my mother tried to be gentle. She offered me tea, asked if I needed help unpacking, but I brushed her off. I couldn't stand the pity in her eyes. I carried my boxes up to my old room one by one, my arms aching, my throat tight. By the time I set the last one down on the carpet, my chest felt hollow. I sat on the floor, surrounded by my past, the faded posters, the old desk, the creak of the same floorboards. This room was once a sanctuary. Now it felt like a time capsule, holding a version of me I no longer recognized. I pressed my palms against my eyes, trying to hold back tears, but they came anyway, hot and fast, until I was gasping. It wasn't just Daniel I was crying over. It wasn't even about losing the future I had imagined with him. It was about the years I had spent giving everything to everyone else, pouring myself out like water, until there was nothing left of me but an echo. It was about realizing that at almost 30, I had built more of other people's lives than my own. I didn't even recognize my own dreams anymore. Did I still want to go back to school? Did I still want to travel? What did I like to do for fun? It was as if I had been living on autopilot for years, so focused on helping and fixing that I'd forgotten how to simply be. That night, after my parents had gone to bed, I sat at my old desk with a notebook. The lamplight cast a warm, yellow glow over the page. My hands shook as I wrote the first words in a long time that weren't for someone else. I am not broken. I am not a failure. I am a pattern that I can change. The words surprised me. They didn't come from a place of despair, but from something deeper, a quiet, stubborn hope. I realized then that seeing myself as the root of the problem wasn't an act of self-blame. It was an act of ownership, and ownership meant possibility. For the first time, I understood. If I was the one who had built this life of self-erasure, then I was also the one who could dismantle it, brick by brick, habit by habit, choice by choice. I closed the notebook and exhaled. The room was still the same, but something inside me had shifted, small, almost imperceptible, but real. The breakdown was also a breakthrough. The shift didn't come in a single, cinematic moment. There was no dramatic sunrise, no grand epiphany. It was quieter than that, like the first breath after a long cry, or the slow thaw of frozen ground. I didn't wake up one day and feel healed. I woke up one day and decided to try. That was enough. It started with small things. I took walks in the morning, just around the neighborhood. No phone, no music, just the sound of my own footsteps, the crunch of leaves underfoot, the whisper of wind against trees. At first, I didn't know what to do with the silence. It was uncomfortable, a mirror too honest, too revealing. But I kept walking, every morning, one foot in front of the other. I stopped following Daniel on social media, stopped checking his name, stopped wondering what or who he was doing now. I realized that curiosity was just another form of self-punishment. I didn't need more reasons to feel left behind. I needed room to move forward. I picked up books I had meant to read for years, but never made time for. I started journaling again, not about him, not about the past, but about me. Who am I when I'm not someone's emotional scaffolding? Who do I want to be when no one is watching? The answers didn't come easily, but asking the questions was a beginning. I went back to therapy, not because I was broken, but because I was ready to stop surviving and start choosing. My therapist asked me one question in our first session that struck a chord I didn't know I had. What would it look like if your love was no longer a transaction? I didn't know how to answer. I had always equated love with effort, with proving, with giving. If I wasn't needed, would I still be loved? And if I stopped giving, who would stay? The truth I've begun to understand is this. Love isn't meant to be earned through self-erasure. The right people will not require your emptiness to feel full. Some days I still wrestle with the urge to overextend. It's muscle memory, the instinct to fix, to please, to make myself indispensable. But now I pause. I ask, am I doing this to connect, or to be chosen? Am I pouring from love or from fear? For the first time in years, I'm choosing myself. Not in a defiant, dramatic way, but in the steady, honest way that says, I matter, even when no one needs me. I still want the things I used to want: a home filled with laughter, a partner who sees me fully, children with sleepy eyes and sticky fingers, a dog curled at our feet. I still believe in love. I still believe in family. But now I understand that those things cannot come instead of myself. They must come with me. And that means becoming someone I truly know, someone I trust, someone I actually like. This is not the life I planned. But maybe, just maybe, it's the life I needed to find who I was always meant to be. This morning, I woke up before the sun. Not because I had to. There was no alarm, no one waiting, no task demanding to be done. I simply opened my eyes, and for the first time in a long while, my chest didn't feel heavy. I pulled on a sweatshirt and padded barefoot into the kitchen, where the world was still and soft with shadows. The kettle hummed as it warmed, and I stood by the window, hands wrapped around a mug of tea, watching the sky slowly shift from dark blue to silver. There was no grand realization, no finish line, just breath, stillness, presence, and that was enough. I don't have everything figured out. My career path is still unfolding. My heart is still healing in quiet places I can't quite name. Some nights the ache still returns, for what was lost, for what never had the chance to be. But even in the ache, there is no bitterness, just space. Space for something new to grow. I'm not rushing to fall in love again. I'm not building anyone else's dreams right now. I'm building my own, slowly, gently, piece by piece. This chapter of my life doesn't come with fireworks or applause. It comes with small, sacred choices, saying no when I mean it, resting without guilt, listening to my own needs, letting go of who I thought I had to be in order to be loved. And for the first time, I'm not afraid of being alone, because I'm not empty, I'm becoming. The version of me who once believed she had to fix others to earn love, she's not gone, but she's evolving. She's learning to stand still without reaching, to hold her own hand before offering it to someone else. I still want the fairy tale, the home, the partner, the laughter-filled kitchen, the chaos of little feet running down the hallway. But now I understand something I didn't before. I don't need to lose myself to find those things. In fact, I need to be more myself than I've ever been. So here I am, not starting over, but starting with me. The girl who once filled every cup but her own is finally learning how to drink, how to rest, how to bloom. And though I don't know exactly where this road leads, I do know this. This is not the end of the story. This is the beginning of becoming the best version of me. Thank you for watching.